I'd like to acknowledge that most of the data that's being used in this challenge, and I am in most of the data collected for this challenge, and I'm located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And that territory is covered by the trees of peace and friendship. So this is the Ocean of Data Challenge, creating a digital harbor from sea to space. It kicks off today. You get 2 weeks to work on it. And then on the 21st, we're going to rejoin and come back together to see everyone's final presentations. My name is Lucia, and I am the outreach coordinator or communications coordinator for DeepSense and for ShiftKey. So welcome to everyone here. Quick review of our agenda. So we're going to just do a quick intro to what DeepSense, ShiftKey, and Cove are, an introduction to the challenges. We have 3 wonderful speakers we're going to be hearing from, who will help introduce kind of the concept of, or what everything that's part of a digital harbor, which I will also explain. Do a quick little Q&A with them, then review the challenge one more time and talk about some data, and then we'll take any questions that you might have related to the challenge. So I want to introduce Tanya Lush with me here. She's going to be talking about Cove, who is one of the 2 partners on this challenge. So Tanya, go for it.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Tanya Lush, Director of Workforce Development at Cove. I'm shouting out to my team as well. So we've got Emily Allen and Kat Mataya on here, who are on my workforce team. So if they want to put their cameras on and wave really quickly, so everybody can put their face to a name. So Emily and Kat are with me today. So Cove is a marine tech innovation hub located on the Dartmouth side of the Halifax Harbour. And Cove has approximately 60 small and medium sized businesses that are part of our community there at the facility, as well as we have a number of national and international partners as well. So though Cove is a Canadian entity located here in Nova Scotia, we have many partners across Canada as well as around the globe. Cove's founding partner is Urban Shipbuilding. With Urban Shipbuilding's continued support, in Cove, we can continue our impact on strengthening Canada's blue economy with jobs and initiatives for enhancing innovation for all the marine sector. So thanks for having us, and we're always happy to partner with DeepSense and our friends at ShiftKey.
Awesome, thanks so much, Tanya. So I'll give a little background to what DeepSense is. So DeepSense is a project out of Dalhousie University with the ultimate goal of making our ocean economy smarter. And we do this by connecting students, specifically in computer science, but also in engineering and in other fields and faculties as well, to different ocean industries. So a lot that work at Cove with Tanya that are based there, many that are based at the Pier in downtown Halifax, and many that are just based in Atlantic Canada. So we talk with these companies, we find out what their data needs are, and then we come up with a project, usually around artificial intelligence or machine learning, data analytics, or visualizations. And then we will connect students with those projects. So they can either be doing internships for 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, up to a year. They can be doing their co-ops. And some have even used the work that they're doing part of their master's project. So there's a wide array of opportunities for students to gain that industry experience. We really want to open the eyes of students to opportunities in the ocean sector, and that they can work and provide their expertise in AI to an organization that does research within lobsters. So there's a lot of cool opportunities out there, and that's what we want to really make those bridges and fill the gap and everything, and show students those opportunities. So you can learn more about us at deepsense.ca. And ShiftKey Labs, we are one of the 5 innovation sandboxes based at Dalhousie University, and we basically want to provide opportunities for students outside the classroom to learn, and we'll bring in folks in the tech industry or in the computer industry to do talks about certain concepts. We'll have professors coming in doing Ask Me Anything to kind of break down those barriers and make you comfortable talking to your profs. We'll do workshops, hackathons, a lot of cool events. We're having a resume review workshop this week to check out during reading week if you'd like. So we have a lot of fun opportunities. We really want students to start kind of thinking outside the box, thinking outside of the classroom, potentially coming up maybe with ideas to start their own ventures or startups or anything like that. Our doors are open for any questions you might have. We can help guide and help potentially even fund small startups as they are getting started. So Shift Key Labs, we're located in the Goldberg Computer Science Building up on the 4th floor. And definitely follow us on social media. We have a Slack channel that's open. We're always looking for volunteers as well. And we have a lot of fun events coming up in the next few weeks. And there's going to be a game jam happening in the new year. Like I said, lots of Ask Me Anything with faculty and so on. So Shift Key is a great opportunity to learn, meet your peers, and grow your own networks as well. So the three of us have come together to put on this event, the Ocean of Data Challenge, and it is all about digital harbors. Now, the big question is, what is a digital harbor? So a digital harbor is all about collecting different types of data. So that data can be stuff from data from under the water, on the water, above the water, from space, all kind of coming together and using all that data to make better decisions for the harbor and the surrounding community. By collaborating together, a digital harbor can develop new products and services by leveraging insight from robust collaboration through different venues. Now, often ocean data or any data is collected for very specific objectives, and this then limits the data collection period, the type of sensors you're using, how much data you're collecting, restricting access to the raw data. These cost management measures and focus on targeted objectives can result in single-use data sets, and then trying to bring in all those single-use data sets together to create comprehensive predictions and observations is difficult and often unachievable. So by creating a digital harbor, it can make it easier and faster to curate and align all these different data sets in a normalized and standard method. And the Digital Harbour project can help Canada become more competitive and develop new products and services. As industry partners begin to engage with the Digital Harbour, there can be creation of interdisciplinary teams of scientists and companies in Canada to grow the knowledge and of the technology required to drive growth in the ocean economy. So this is a concept that we've been talking about developing and building out here in Halifax. We're excited to hear everyone's idea of how they would do that and the best way they would do that. So essentially, what do you think a digital harbor should look like or could look like? How do you think it could be set up? How and what sort of data should be collected? How it should be how that data should be stored and shared? How it's accessible to the public or not? And how could it drive harbor efficiency and sustainability? How we can better communicate the benefits of a digital harbor to Halifax, Atlantic Canada, and the world. So all these different questions are things you can think about. You can find your own questions to answer about what a digital harbor is, but it's really thinking of what you think it could be, how we can bring in all this data, how we can take data from space, from sea, and combine it to create those efficient decisions. So the overall challenge is using some type of data to explore interdisciplinary ideas about what should our future digital harbor look like. So we've been working closely with Cove throughout all the discussions of what a digital harbor is. And like I said, it's something we hope for Halifax to become. So we're open to seeing what your ideas are and bringing in those interdisciplinary ideas together. So that's why whenever we do these Ocean of Data challenges, we always open them up to those in a variety of different fields. You don't have to be a computer scientist, you don't have to be an engineer. We've had art students from NSCC participate in the past. We've had computer science students, engineering students. We even had a high school student participate last year. So this is a great opportunity to really put on your thinking caps. You can work alone, work on a team, really come up with ideas to answer this challenge of what should our future digital harbor look like. Now, it is kind of overwhelming. It's a big question. It's a big ask. So we try to break it down into 3 different streams to hopefully make it more manageable or digestible. We encourage you to pick one of the streams to kind of help guide what your idea or your final product presentation will be. You're welcome to combine streams if you'd like, but we do ask you just to pick at least one of them. So we have under the water. This stream tackles anything happening beneath the surface. So data that comes from sensors or water temperatures, salinity, currents, any of that stuff. So maybe you want to determine what the best way to measure boat noise is and how that will impact the underwater environment and how that's connected to Digital Harbour, how it can be communicated. Maybe you want to look at depths in the harbor and how that works with the safety of vehicles or vessels during certain weather, or the best measurements needed to ensure a safe harbor and how all that works together. So that's our first stream. We have under the water. Then we have on the water. And this is basically has to do about the movement of people and vessels and other activities that might happen on the water. What are some considerations that need to take place for shipping efficiency or cruise ships efficiency as they come in, or other vessels? How can data from these vessels help our harbor? How can it be combined with other data for the best decision-making processes? So all these different questions, we're really flexible and open to lots of different solutions and ideas, which is really exciting. And then finally, we have, usually this category is around the water, but this time we've made it above the water because we're going really far above. We're talking using satellite images, drone images, that sort of data, and kind of figure out how can the sky help inform the sea, essentially. How can we bring those two together to really make a full holistic digital harbor, because it's all connected in some way, and they should work together, and what data above the water matters to our harbors. So those are the 3 challenge streams that we have. And like I said, when you fully register for the challenge, we ask you to pick at least one. If you're not sure at the time, that's okay. When you finally are presenting, it does ask you again to say which challenge stream you've chosen. You can combine them, combine all 3 if you'd like, but for sure, there's a lot of opportunities there. I should also mention, if you have any questions, you can drop those in the chat as we're going. We'll be doing a Q&A towards the end, so you can either hold on to them for that, or you can drop them in the chat, up to you. We also have a Q&A box as well. But that is our overview of the challenge. We're going to go into depth a little bit later on it as well after our speakers. So I just wanted to kind of give you guys an idea of what to think about as our speakers then talk about the different areas of expertise, and then we'll dive back into the challenge. So I'll be letting our speakers take over. So we have, like I said, a variety of experts spanning marine engineering, maritime security, surveillance, marine and ocean tech. And we're really excited and thankful that they were able to take some time out of their evenings to come and join us today. So our first speaker that we have is Dr. May Sito, and my slide won't change. There we go. So Dr. Sito has worked in the private industry for about 6 years in research and development projects related to autonomous underwater vehicles. She moved to Nova Scotia to work as a defense scientist for Defense Research and Development Canada, and joined Dalhousie's Department of Mechanical Engineering as an associate professor in 2017. She's the director of the Intelligence Systems Laboratory, which is a multidisciplinary lab that works at the intersection of engineering and computer science to enable autonomous systems to operate at long ranges for extended durations in harsh and dynamic environments like ocean and space. So perfect to come and talk to us about the Digital Harbour from Sea to Space Challenge. So thank you, Dr. Sito, for taking the time to join us today. I'll stop sharing my screen, and you're welcome to share yours and take over.
Okay, thank you for the introduction, Lucija. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear and we can see. Perfect.
I can see my screen.
Yeah.
Okay, so given the topic, I thought I'd give, we only have 10 minutes, so I thought I'd give a quick overview of several sensing technologies from sea to space that could be that could be applicable to the Digital Harbour. That way you sort of know, well, what's collecting all the data that I'm supposed to be working with. So military and maritime domain awareness. So we've got government and commercial actors who have to know what's going on in the maritime environment as far as safety, security, economy, and its environmental impact. So maritime here means all areas and activities that border on seas, oceans, and larger bodies of water. And this awareness, we're going to say, is got through data from land, sea, air, and satellite-based sensors. The one I'm going to focus on is how you would track maritime targets. So examples of that would be vessels. So vessels being ships, sometimes they're barges. So knowledge of their positions and their behaviors. And I'd also note that some vessels may not be cooperative, meaning that they're not necessarily telling you what their positions are or who they are. So the King's Harbour Master, I'd like to make one modest suggestion that for those to consider that the Digital Harbour should be relevant to what the King's Harbour Master has to do. So a harbour master enforces regulations and codes of practice, and this is no different in Halifax Harbour. They are concerned with safety, vessel navigation, security, protection of the marine environment, and safe port operation. So if we had something like a fire or an explosion or an oil spill, that will close the harbour for an indefinite time and have a really large impact economically, safety-wise, what have you. So in terms of specific security tasks, the King's Harbour Master has to be occupied with, and this is 24/7, all days of the week: threat detection and security response, inspection of port assets, and when the events call for it, inspections of post-storm or other disasters, surveys to ensure that your waterways are navigable, and as needed, hull inspections. And they have to achieve all these tasks like everybody else while monitoring the impact of their tasks on the environment. So at present, what they use are cameras, which are distributed throughout the port, and a crew of a fleet of vessels that are driven up and down the waterway expanse. So that takes a lot of people labor, and cameras have to be monitored 24/7, all days of the week, if they're going to be of any use to begin with. So a Digital Harbour challenge, if you're looking for a challenge, provide database solutions for some of the Harbour Master's tasks. What could you do given all the data that could be available to help them with their task? So the first sensor I want to talk about that you could use, for which there's lots of data, is the automated identification system. So ships that meet a certain criteria must carry an AIS transponder on board, and it identifies the ship through a unique number, the type of ship, so Class A, Class B, what have you, the size, position, course, and speed. So a lot about the ship. And there are land and satellite-based versions of this. And for the maritime authorities, they monitor and collect this type of data to avoid collision. So that's always a good idea. Monitoring and tracking vessel movements. So if there are suspect vessels that should be watched a little more closely, they can achieve that through AIS. And of course, for harbor security. And a lot of the AIS data that our lab works with is the subject of machine learning projects. So if you're interested in machine learning and potentially how that could help with data, your Digital Harbour, this is one area. So this is a map that I downloaded just yesterday, and it shows the movements of a variety of ships. All right, and I zoomed in on our little harbor here, Halifax Harbour, and you can hover your cursor over the different dots, and they'll tell you a fair bit about what the vessels are. So then you can monitor the comings and goings of the vessel traffic. If you're interested in accessing that data, so you can always log on, you can always just go onto this website and you can see and click on to the different sites, to the different vessels that you're interested in. But if you want to download the data, there's also information here. I think you might need to have a subscription to AIS because we have one, but I don't know if you have to have one. Right, so AIS, the Automated Identification System, is one such sensor which helps you monitor the harbor. You can also stick your head underwater. So AIS is above water. Underwater, you could be monitoring the acoustic underwater radiated noise. So increasingly, more harbors and inland bodies of water are putting hydrophones into their harbors to monitor potentially ships, marine mammals, what have you. So examples of ranges, so we call it a range if it's got a submerged hydrophone in it for the purposes of monitoring acoustically underwater what's going on. We have our own Halifax Sound Range, the Pat Bay Sound Range, which is on the west coast. So these two are D&D sound ranges, which will now be accessed more widely. There's also the Marine Acoustic Research Station, not far from Rimouski and the St. Lawrence Seaway. There's also a lander. So a lander is like a platform that's underwater that hosts a fair bit of sensors. And oftentimes these landers are cabled to shore for power, for communications, or for control. So there's a lander at Fundy that I'll talk about a little bit later. And there's Stella Maris at the Cove, which third speaker, Kennedy Sittler, will talk about. So these hydrophones, so again, hydrophones sort of like the underwater analog of microphones, they can be buried in the seabed or deployed from the lander. And part of what our lab does is we would take the underwater noise, and we can sometimes identify a single vessel based on its noise and its behaviors. So there's a special way of looking at the underwater noise in the frequency spectrum, and you can track that vessel's movements, and you can identify repeat visitors to the harbor. So there are sources of noise that you can access if you're interested. So the example at the Fundy Ocean Research Center for Energy in Parsboro in Nova Scotia, there's a lander that JASCO, one of our partners, has deployed, and it's got 3 hydrophones in it, and it can correlate the measurements from the 3 to identify the source of the noise that they're detecting, whether it's a passing vessel, construction activity on land. Sometimes you can hear the trains underwater, believe it or not, marine fauna. And their objective here is to understand the ecosystem of this unique place with the intent to minimize its environmental impact. So that's an example. And then going into space, so satellites in generally low Earth orbit, but they can also be in medium and geosynchronous orbits. If they're outfitted with multispectral cameras, so your eyes see visible light over a specific spectrum, multispectral can see over a larger range than your eyes can see. So for instance, IR and UV are beyond our eyes' ability to see. So satellites with multispectral cameras or radar payloads can take very good imagery over a target. And an example of a target would be a harbor. Synthetic aperture radar is the gold standard for maritime monitoring, but it's really good. But it's really expensive, and it is very good. It can see through marine weather, so cloud, fog, darkness, and it's also can be used to monitor vessel traffic. So it is a really big task to be able to analyze this huge amount of data and to have it ready in near real time for near real time actioning. So if you see a suspected a ship, for instance, coming into your harbor and you want to follow it, you're going to track them with synthetic aperture radar. You have to do this very difficult and large amount of data processing as quickly as you can. So this area is also quite popular for machine learning applications. So given a picture, how can I determine if it's a ship? And if it's a ship, possibly what type of ship it may be. So Canada has a RadarSat constellation mission, the RCM. These are Earth observation satellites. They are at an altitude of 600 to 800 kilometers. So just for reference, the International Space Station is about 400-ish kilometers at altitude, and it's outfitted with a synthetic aperture radar payload. So ships would appear shiny in synthetic aperture imagery against the dark background of open water. That's just how radar, so the C-bands, interpret what they're seeing. You can combine these essentially pictures with AIS. We talked about AIS earlier, AIS measurements to to confirm a detection. So I see the ship on AIS. I see that given it the long that it's at, it's the ship with this name, this class, this size, and this is its course. So if you're interested in RCM data, you can download it at this site. I think you have to register and do a bunch of other things. I can't remember. It's been a while since we've registered for the first time, but there's lots of information there. So that's data that's available. As well, you can also be using autonomous assets. So the aerial drones are an obvious example, but at this point in history, aerial drones don't have a lot of endurance. So 15, 20 minutes is what they have. So the Port of LA, which is one of the largest ports in the world, has done a proof of concept demo with something called an autonomous surface vehicle. So an autonomous surface vehicle is a robotic vehicle that can move around. It's built on a catamaran hull form. It can have EO, IR, thermal video, as well as other types of sensors and sensing. Right. Commercial off the shelf, USVs can conduct fairly comprehensive harbor security inspection, as proven in this proof of concept that the port of, okay, I got the wrong port. It should be the Port of San Francisco did. Anyways, that is my presentation. Are there any questions?
Yes, May is going to have to be heading out. So if you have any questions, maybe drop them in the chat now. That was a
Sure.
great,
Yeah, I'll monitor the chat.
yeah, that was a great review of all the different types of data that are involved with a harbor. So thank you for all that, May.
Yeah, not a problem.
That was awesome. And then I don't see any questions coming in, but we can move on to our next speaker. So we have Dr. Anthony Eisner, who is a defense scientist and acting head of the Maritime Systems Experimentation and Analytics section of Defense Research and Development Canada in the Atlantic Research Center. So Anthony has led projects dealing with technologies for trusted maritime domain awareness, situational information covering approaches to Canada, and is a past member of NATO research groups that dealt with semantics and adaptive information processing to support military command and control. So thank you for taking some time today to join us, Anthony.
Hi, everyone. So with that intro, let's see.
Yeah, you're welcome to share your screen. We can hear you okay. And we can see your slides. Perfect.
Perfect, it worked.
Yes.
So hi, everyone. I'm Anthony Eisner, and as I was sitting today thinking about what to say to the group, I had this thought that there's so much more behind this activity than just the challenge itself. It's actually incorporating and shaping the minds of the future, really, and thus the title, Building Our Future Scientific and Technological Minds. You are our future. So a bit of shameless self-promotion, if you will. Just one slide on the shameless part. I just wanted people to recognize that the Defense Research and Development Canada Lab in Atlantic, the Atlantic Research Center, is in fact on the harbor. It's in between the two bridges. We have McDonald Bridge here and the McKay Bridge here, and we are located just in between the two on the Dartmouth side. So a vested interest, if you will, in the harbor and a digital harbor. In terms of what the lab does, I'll cover two of these quickly. So naval platforms is a big chunk of the lab's research efforts. Essentially the hulls design, propeller design, fluid dynamics flow around those hulls. That's this bubble here. There's the underwater aspect of the lab, dealing with things like torpedo and mine defense, underwater comms, for example. Then there's this bubble. This is kind of the bubble that's related to the topic tonight and the digital harbor. The fact that you're bringing information together, you're aggregating it, storing it, making it accessible, applying numerical models of some type, be they through machine learning or what have you, to produce a forecast of something, be it a physical entity perhaps on the water surface or under the water or the flow of the water itself. And that is all oriented towards supporting some decision that's going to take place in that space. And it's this bubble that really sort of speaks to this crowd tonight. So thinking about what your digital harbor might look like when it comes weeks into the future and you have your product created, sort of thinking about these things in reverse order, top to bottom effectively. As May indicated, we often collectively refer to these spaces or these physical locations collectively as the maritime domain. And so we speak of the awareness of the decision makers' knowledge of that maritime domain. And what we try to acquire is this maritime domain awareness as to where things are, which way they're going, what they're carrying, etc. One point when I tried to frame this talk around things that you might want to think about when you're creating your digital harbor. One thing that might not be obvious to everyone is the very different timescales that exist in these spaces. If you think about things that are above the water, but nevertheless included in the maritime domain, you're thinking of things perhaps that move at hundreds of kilometers an hour, like an airplane. On the water, it's more like tens of kilometers an hour. And then under the water, it's even slower. So maybe sub 20 kilometers, sub 10 kilometers an hour for under the water. So quite a bit different in terms of if you're going to think about merging or aggregating data from these three sort of domains, you might want to think of timescales. Quite a bit different too in terms of volumes of data, the collection capabilities from space, much greater than the collection capabilities on the water or on land, because of the fact that you need so many more sensors on land to actually do the collections, whereas space, as May pointed out, with the satellites at many hundreds of kilometers above the Earth's surface, they see a broader footprint of that surface. The other thing to think about in your digital harbor that I didn't put in here is the fact that quite often digital harbors, or digital twins, if you will, a twin of something that exists, in this case, the harbor, they do have this aspect of forecasting or predictive aspect as to what is going to perhaps evolve in the situation. And that is, in fact, part of the awareness that we try to build for the maritime domain. So other things that you might want to think about, because you have a limited amount of time, so you might want to think about what sort of topic space that you maybe want to focus on. Maybe you want to try to focus on a set of topic spaces, but if you're just interested in one or two, maybe you can focus on those. So for example, a topic space for the harbor might be biology, and you can think of the fact that marine mammals exist in the harbor. There's a certain amount of fish stock that could exist in the harbor. So there's an aspect of biology if that interests you. If security and law interests you, the harbor is a place of multiple jurisdictions, provincial, federal in some cases. So there's the fact that traffic, that port traffic, actually transitions from jurisdictions as it moves through the harbor. There's the environmental aspect, the fact that it's water, it's moving around, it's influenced by the tides, it's influenced by weather. This is a very old photo from 1987, actually, of Halifax Harbor. And what it's showing is a lot of ice in the harbor. It wasn't formed naturally in the harbor. It was actually influenced by a very particular wind direction, which drove that ice into the harbor. So the weather, in fact, has unique ways of influencing the harbor by times. You might want to think of the economics of the harbor. So port activity, the large container ships that if you're around the Halifax area, you see coming in and out of the harbor. What are they carrying? How many millions of dollars worth of goods are on those container ships? So there's an economic aspect to the port traffic. And there's a fisheries aspect too to the economic side of things. So how much fisheries activity can take place as opposed to the stocks that exist in the biological setting. And there's a tourism aspect for sure. You know, we promote the clean and beautiful harbor that we have, and so maybe there's an aspect to scheduling of tourist activities for the ferry or for the ships that can be rented for the tourists. In terms of data that you might want to track down, May has mentioned some from marine traffic, which is this one here. In terms of, I was thinking as above water as more of the data that could be collected on or about things that exist above the water line. So airline flights, weather, for example. If you're thinking about the port itself, there's port control, which has a web access to some data on the comings and goings of the cargo ships on the harbor. I started wondering about the speed limits in the harbor because that would be kind of interesting. As far as I could tell, there's no data set, no easily accessible data on the speed limits in the harbor, but there are certainly port documents which outline areas where there are different speed limits. Under the water, bit trickier I found actually, but if you think of the water itself, there are certainly tides and currents that exist, and some of that's available on the web as well. So things to think about in my concluding thoughts. I'd suggest thinking about your end goal and that target audience, be it biology, security, law, etc., who might use your digital harbor. And what benefits do you see as coming out of the work for those decision makers? All of those should play into the storyline as to what it is you're creating and how you're aggregating this information for a particular purpose. And with that, I conclude. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anthony. That was a very good list of different types of, again, data and lots of ideas I think you threw out there. So that's very helpful to all our participants. So thank you again. I really like the idea of how you split the topics up into the tourism, biology, security, and law, environment, and economics. I think that's a really helpful way for people to examine the data or the challenge. So thank you. Once again, you guys can drop any questions you have in the chat. And we just have one more speaker to go through. It is Kennedy Sittler. So Kennedy joined Cove in 2021 through her participation in their summer internship program. In the program, Kennedy was essential to building the Stella Maris that May mentioned. It's Cove's multi-sensor seabed platform. Upon completing her internship, she continued her career to become Cove's marine technical specialist. So Kennedy is from Kitchener, Ontario, attended Dalhousie University, and she graduated with a Bachelor of Ocean Science and a minor in Political Science. And she has attended NSCC and graduated with honors from their Ocean Technology Advanced Diploma program. So Kennedy, I'm going to pass it off to you and you can take it away.
Awesome. Sorry, one second. Okay. And then there we go. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can hear you. Great.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm Kennedy, and like it's already said, I work at Cove, and I am the Marine Technical Specialist. So today I'm just going to kind of talk about the Stella Maris, the subsea platform, and how one portion of Digital Harbour is collecting subsea data. And so this is a pretty unique way to be able to do something like this. And so I was just going to touch on how Stella works, and then a little bit on data collaboration afterwards. This is a video of what Stella Maris looks like and the construction of the platform to give a bit more of a visual. So the Stella Maris platform sits along the ocean floor, and it has the capacity to hold a wide variety of different oceanographic instruments. So this is an image of what Stella looks like under the water. So as you can see, a wide variety of different instruments on there, as well as some underwater cameras. So the Stella Maris platform was originally developed to help promote tech innovation in the ocean sector. It is a test bed for ocean technology companies to conduct product development, verification, and commercialization in the marine environment to ultimately help get their products to the market faster. So the platform is located currently in Dartmouth Cove. So it's about 100 meters off the wharf located at the Cove facility. And it sits about 9 to 10 meters below the surface, water surface. And the way that the platform works currently is that we do 3-month deployments. So we put it in the water for 3 months, and then we take it out for about a week for maintenance and for companies to swap out instruments, and then we put it back out into the water. So the Stella Maris is quite a unique system because it has real-time data collection as well as communication. So it's tethered to shore, which allows for this continuous communication and data collection to happen. But this means that users are able to remotely monitor, control, and configure the equipment that's on the platform. And also, one thing to note is that real-time data is really difficult subsea. So typically, a lot of data is either, through water column deployments, it's recorded on the individual sensor itself. So this method allows for that real-time data collection to come in. So right now there is currently 16 different sensors that are on the platform, and there's considered to be 2 different categories on the platform. So we have reference sensors, and then we also have client sensors. So reference sensors are those that are owned, managed, and operated by Cove. And then there's client sensors, which are owned, operated, and managed by the company that is paying to be on the platform for product development, verification, or commercialization. So the image here is showing what our live real-time data portal would look like. So this would be a continuous feed of live data coming in. And as I stated, there are 16 different sensors all on one platform. So I'm going to touch through a couple of sensors that you could incorporate into your Digital Harbour as being data collections for subsea. So one sensor is a turbidity sensor. So this determines water clarity. We also have a phosphate sensor, and this does phosphate concentrations present in the water. And then underwater camera. So being able to actually visually see what's going on under the water. So depending on where you're located, there's different sea bottoms. So having an actual visual representation could be some sort of data collection. I'm going to go into a bit more depth with a couple of instruments. So one is a CTD, so a conductivity temperature depth sensor. So on the screen, this is an RVR CTD. We have this one on our platform, so conductivity is related to salinity. So that's telling us how salty the water is. These sensors are considered to be really important because they collect important parameters for the marine environment. So they measure the chemical and physical properties of the water column, which serve as a foundation for understanding the marine environment. So some examples of why it's important, the combinations of water temperature and salinity data can be used to determine different or define different water masses. So this could be extremely important for things like a larger picture of ocean circulation, or even something like the flow of water into the harbor. It can be used to understand biological processes such as algae growth, and they're important for understanding speed of sound in the marine environment. And then another instrument that I'm going to talk about is hydrophones. So on the platform, we have 3 different sets of hydrophones collecting acoustic noise. So we have 2 from Turbulent Research, we have 2 from Sensor Technology, and then we have 2 from Ocean Sonics. The image on the screen is the Ocean Sonics hydrophone. There's also an image of the spectrogram. So hydrophones collect underwater underwater microphones, and they collect underwater noises. So you can listen to underwater noises or record underwater noises. So this could be important for collecting data on, just say, vessel traffic noise in the harbor. They're also used for detection of whales and things like that further out of the harbor. So the image here is a spectrogram, and this is demonstrating when a boat went over our platform. So where the red is, that demonstrates the louder noise of the boat going over. And then for my last slide, I just wanted to touch on a couple of things with data collaboration and why something like Digital Harbour could be of great value. So the Stellamaris is unique because there was a lot of collaboration, and having a lot of instruments on the platform led to a lot of different findings. And it's quite rare to have such a wide variety of different instrumentation located in one spot. So then obviously, speaking on a larger scale with Digital Harbour, having this initiative and project with having data collected from seabed to space and that integration, it promotes the need as well as just demonstrates the benefits of having data collaboration. So one thing is that ocean data collection is considered to be a robust activity. And one thing to note is that data itself does not equate to information. So as it was already stated, typically in multiple sectors, not just ocean, researchers and companies and businesses, they act independently when collecting data for a specific location or a specific point in time to support their investigation. And it's not typically accessible to the public or to other companies or interested parties. And by having data collaboration of various sources of data, so having it seabed to space, all integrated, it allows for an increase of knowledge and information. And this allows us to make more strategic and routine decisions about our marine environment as well as our ports. And so by having this data collaboration, it leads to more reliable and accessible and complete data sets, which again, that data then becomes good information to make these decisions. And then I just wanted to touch on some benefits that would come of Digital Harbour to just consider. So it would be something where it improves safety and reduces accidents in our ports. It would improve the accessibility or ability for vessels to reach their destinations efficiently, saving both cost and lives. New technologies will be able to reach market faster as their impacts will be more closely understood, driving business and economic growth. And then most importantly, close monitoring of our environmental factors and port health allows for both public and private sectors and actors to make the most advantageous actions for our ocean's longevity for the generations to come. So that's all I have today. If you have any questions after this or just want to reach out, my email's outlined below. But yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kennedy.
Thank you.
That was a really great look at what what Stella Maris can provide for people and what it's been doing. So that's awesome. Now we can do some questions. If anyone has any questions for our speakers, I'm also going to introduce the Deep Sense and ShiftKey Executive Director, Jennifer LaPlante, who will be here to help guide the Q&A session. We have some questions ready if you guys don't have any yet, so we can start with those if no one has any questions for our speakers. Once again, you can drop them in the chat, you can raise your hand, we can unmute you, whatever works. But I think, Jen, we can go with one of our questions.
Go for it. Yeah, let's do it. So I'm curious for any of the speakers, are there versions of data that contrast or contradict each other? May, Ken, Anthony, are there?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
So what happens, and can you give examples?
You could have, say you're trying to take a measurement of a ship passing over a hydrophone. We did this today. So we ranged from west to east in one direction and then east to west in the other direction. It should be exactly the same because nothing has changed. And it was over a short enough time period that nothing should have changed in the water. But there's also differences in the environment. So the environment, complexity from the environment will have the data sometimes contradict one another. It's not wrong, it's just very specific to the direction that you're traveling in. So that happens often enough.
That's, I can imagine, tricky. Anthony and Ken, do you have any examples as well?
Anytime you have two sensors. That's kind of what it boils down to. The land and the space sensors, you can actually, in a way, trick the sensors in the case of AIS, which May brought up, the automatic identification system. So sometimes you can create chips that aren't really there, that are detected in the space feed, but maybe not so much in the local sensor feed. So whenever you have two sensors is my answer. Yeah.
Or it could be just wrong for whatever reasons. And we know it's wrong because we have the ground truth from a satellite image of the ship. Right, so it's the right time and it's the right ship. But AIS says it's in a place that the camera doesn't agree with. So that reinforces Anthony's point. You know, we tried it with the AIS, we tried it with the multispectral camera, and they don't agree.
Yeah, actually, there's a follow-on to that which just passed through my mind. The whole verification of it through a visual, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the social media, for example, if a sensor says there's a ship, the USS Minnow is in Halifax Harbour, but then the USS Minnow is spotted in I don't know, St. John's.
Hawaii.
Yeah, Hawaii, and there's
Where
only one. There's only one USS Minnow. So yes. Do you believe the sensor, or do you believe the photograph that's tagged from the social media site?
We could get into fake photos, but we won't get into that world of what's true, what's not. Another one is, as we're increasingly becoming more digital, what should we be monitoring for protection? What are the things that we should actually be worried about?
You mean like cyber threats or spoofing or
any of the above?
Privacy.
Yes, privacy.
Privacy comes into it. We try to stay away from privacy for sure. It's not our cup of tea.
So, yeah, I mean, spoofing happens a fair bit. So people make up stories about who they think they are on AIS for whatever their reasons are. We won't discuss that here.
We have a question in the chat. Is there an open source underwater acoustic data that we could have access to?
I think so.
For the harbor?
Or
I don't know. I don't know of any.
Well, isn't what Stella Maris collecting? Kennedy, you can weigh in on this. I mean, Stella Maris is collecting underwater acoustic data. Is that available to the people participating in the challenge?
So we do collect acoustic data. but it's typically something where people would have to reach out to us, and then we would grant them access, kind of thing. We don't have the acoustic data present on any like website or anything. It's one of those things where we have to physically download the data off of the server and provide it to people that are interested.
Yeah, that's always going to be the case, right? Nobody's going to just plunk it up on the website. There's also quite a few websites. I think the Watson one is the best one, that have acoustic recordings of marine mammals, right? And they've classified the different types of marine mammals. I know, because we tried to make machine learning models from what's there, and you can, right? So it's plentiful and free enough that you could access it. If you guys, who's asking the question here? I've lost my screen.
There was someone in the chat that was asking. Calvin was asking.
Let me see if I can find. So Calvin, are you interested in marine mammal underwater acoustic noise?
Yes, yes.
Okay, let me see if I can find it. I'm not at my usual desk.
I think there's a group at Dal as well under Dr. Sam Matwin called Meridian, and they've worked a lot with acoustic data, and they might have some that's public. I think the other one thing though to keep in mind is this is where it gets tricky. Lutzi and I have had these conversations about what kind of data you actually share during a challenge, because if you haven't worked with acoustic data before, it can be really tricky. And right. And then you also knowing what you're looking for. And I'll use one example that we've run into where we worked with a student who was once just using buoy data, and it was wind speeds and wave heights. And there was a wave height of 100 meters. And how would you know if that's an outlier unless you knew that a 100-meter wave is it's not going to happen just outside the Halifax Harbor. And it's the whole concept of what's good data, what's bad data, how to use it. And I think we talked about trying to find some good quality acoustic data, knowing that it kind of opens up that can of worms. But if you're interested, we highly recommend there's definitely stuff out there. And Meridian does a lot of open source work where they've trained some neural nets to find different types of species, porpoises and whales and others. And so they may have some things. So I think if you're really interested in a specific type of data as well, reach out, because we might be able to find something where someone's not willing to share it publicly on a website, but they might be willing to share it with you if they say, can you just please not share this with other people?
Yeah, most of the time you're going to need to ask for permission. Nobody's going to put it up on a website because sometimes they purchased it, right? And if they purchased it, then there were rules about how they would share it. I'm still looking for that.
I'm also curious. So when we think of the Digital Harbour and all of the different pieces, when we think, there's autonomous vessels and there's going to be, there's people that use the harbor. There's all these different things that you've all talked about. Are there good examples? I think, May, you touched on a couple ports, but are there good examples of other places around the globe that are kind of neat as something to look at, something that's become very digital and has some interesting technology?
How do you mean, Jen?
Like, are there other ones to look at and kind of investigate, and are there good examples for us to model ourselves after?
Oh, in terms of what we're trying to achieve here?
Sure. Or just ideas of people want to learn a little bit more about what technologies out there, what kind of solutions can be identified, what different ways harbors operate.
Well, Rotterdam Port has a very impressive modern port facility.
I'd look towards ports, but the other thing that flashed through my mind is this general concept of the smart city.
Right.
What went through my mind, that although land-based, you might be able to, I know Montreal had a big effort in smart city. In fact, I know people who left their jobs to go to the Montreal group that was building the smart city. So there may be aspects there that you can port from that land perspective to a more harbor perspective.
That's a great idea. And I think also when you think about 5G capabilities and the bandwidth across water and how far IoT devices can actually reach and what you can have connected within, the simple jurisdiction of a port and a smaller, narrower port, kind of like Halifax, there could be some very smart technology that's employed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm putting the link for Calvin in the chat. It's the marine mammal Watkins Marine Mammal Repository. That's free and open to everybody. You don't need to ask permission. You do what you want with it. If you're going to use it extensively, you should probably acknowledge it as a source for you. So that's a site. Let me see if I can find stuff about Rotterdam Port. Because when I was in the Netherlands, I was very impressed. It's a smart port, I think.
Yeah, instead of a smart city, it's a smart port.
They're all smart. I think the people in the Netherlands have figured everything out. They can teach us a few things.
May, did you say you posted it in the chat?
I put a link in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
wait,
might
I
have to
don't-
toggle it to everybody.
I'm
think
sorry, I
everyone-
sent it to Kennedy. I should have sent it. I sent Kennedy a note and I forgot. Okay,
She'll
Kennedy.
appreciate it. There you go.
Yeah. Everyone, apologies. Thank you for telling me.
Well, and these are other things too, like reach out. We can add we can update things. We have a couple more slides to go through just to share a bit more around the rest of our challenge, including, you know, a reminder of what you're looking for, what you're trying to do. So Lucia, should we bring that back up, the slides?
Yeah, sure. We're good with the questions from our
Are
speakers.
there any other questions that I'm just looking to double check? Okay. And is there anything that either all three of you would like to add after having listened to each other talk, of things that came up that you're thinking, oh, what about?
No, nothing from me.
Okay.
Well, I learned more about the instrumentation on the Stella Maris because we use that every now and then. So thank you for that, Kennedy. At some point, I'm going to ask you for the performance curve for one of the hydrophones because I don't have them. I have the Ocean Sonics one, but I don't have the other one.
I do think that, you know, Ken's work on that is a really interesting evolution of taking something from, you know, a concept into actually building out the systems to even have a database that allow you to download and access data. It's a fascinating initiative as well, which I'm sure we'll spend more time on in a future challenge. Excellent. Thank you. So Lucia, if you want to throw that up, that'd be great.
Yeah, and thank you, May, Anthony, and Kennedy. You can stick around. You're also free to go if you'd like, but we're just gonna go over the final parts of the challenge for everyone. I'm gonna share my
I'm going to
screen.
bow out then.
Excellent.
All right.
Thanks very much, all three
Thank
of you.
you.
We appreciate it.
All right, I gotta go. I have another
Bye-bye.
meeting somewhere else.
All right. Thank you. Awesome. I'm sorry. I'm just looking at what could be the challenges that most. I'll have to come back to that question because I can't read two things at once. Lucio, there's a question there in the chat, but let's go back to remind you of the challenge. So we use the three themes of under the water, on the water, and above the water as just ideas. They don't have to necessarily tackle one. They could tackle all three. There could be overlap, but it's the reminder of under the water and thinking things that are moving, the technology that's used, keeping our water safe, measuring, you know, when you think of climate change, what the temperature of water, the makeup of water, the acidity of it, the oxygen levels, different things that are going to be really important as things become more digital. And then on the water, you know, there's touching on, Anthony was touching on some other pieces too, above the water, thinking of airplanes, but on the water, you know, thinking of vessels and people. We can never forget that we have a port, and a digital port definitely operates where you have goods that move, you have people that move, but it's tourism. Tourism is a really big, tourism is a huge impact for so many ports and so many cities, everything from cruise ships to people who sit on sea-doos and kayaks. So thinking about how technology evolves, how do you have functional systems that are very digital operating with a very analog kayak, and how does that world all come together? And what kind of future impacts can we look at? What kind of new technologies might be coming forward that we need to ensure function? You know, touch on the concept of 5G. If you have systems that are heavily reliant upon having technology that operates, that means you need to have power, you need to have internet, and how can these systems scale, and what are redundancies required? And once we get into the above the water, I think, you know, talking about what's in the sky, May talks about satellites, and when you think about the information that's coming from all of those systems. You can have planes that fly overhead, drones. What happens if you have a pile of different drones that collect information and then trying to pair that up together? And how can you kind of better understand who's moving, what's moving, and what's moving around? And really just how we overall evaluate the ocean. And I think touching on that piece around the contrast and contradicting data, the idea of like AIS data says one thing, but an image says something else. It's kind of a really neat idea of thinking, how do you get around that? Or is there something we should think about? So that's your overall challenge, thinking about whatever problem you want to tackle. It's up to you. You could take one of these ideas, you can take a couple of ideas and smush them together, but it's trying to come up with some kind of a challenge. So data. We do have one requirement. This is a data challenge. We would like you to use some form of public data. And so when you're using this data, what that means is you could reference and say 55% of all ships that do this. Lucy just shared a link in the chat, which is a Google Doc that's been prepared of a pile of different publicly sourced data pieces. We're not looking for you to go and find private data and use that as a reference point. Maybe if you have spoken with someone and get a chance to look at some kind of acoustic data, and then you reference what you used and how you received it. But we're not looking for you to do complex analysis as well. This isn't a Kaggle competition in building neural nets. We're looking just for you to use some kind of information and make informed decisions, recommendations. But we really want you to kind of go out and learn a little about what kind of data is out there. So it's really using one piece of data at least. The rules are important. What you're coming up with varies. You can have a technology solution, a prototype of visualization, something that kind of really addresses the questions that were outlined in those streams we just talked about, below the water, on the water, and above the water. Some people will bring forward a solution that's really technical, but maybe that's not your skill set. We've had people that have done presentations of ideas, analysis of dashboards and different things. So really kind of aligning well with your skill set. Or the other piece is important is a team. Working together, diverse skill sets, and trying to come up with something together. Remember that you need to have some form of data. Anything that you bring forward is something you have prepared or you have rights to. We want to ensure that you're not going to using some company's private information. Like I worked for the summer for this one company a couple of years ago. I took a bunch of documents when I left, and I'm going to use that. We want to make sure that doesn't happen. We want publicly available things that you have rights to. Our groups are always encouraged because you have a chance to work with other people, but if you'd like to work alone, you're welcome to do that as well. Up to 5 members of your team is really critical, but if you want to work by yourself or within a smaller group of 2 or 3, feel free. Strongly encourage you to find friends that you have that are in other disciplines, that are in other faculties, because you'll bring forward different ideas. And when you do your presentation, sometimes it really shows when you've had different schools of thought coming forward. You're knowing confidential information, going back to what we would hope is that we expect is that you're only looking at public information. The part-time and full-time student piece is really irrelevant. It doesn't matter. We just need you to be a student somewhere in Atlantic, Canada, at a registered institution. So a college or university, or you might have graduated in the past 12 months. We will go back and find out. So if you participate, submit, and then are successful and win, we just want to make sure that that's the truth and that's really who you are. We have allowed people to participate and submit even though they're not students, which is fine. It just means they're not eligible for prizes. We'll always encourage someone to try and explore and understand ocean data a little bit more. But the requirement is that you're currently a part-time or a full-time student or just graduated. You have 2 weeks. So November 21st is when the final challenge will finish up. If you really want to participate, which we're hoping that you do, and you're going to bring some friends and encourage them to also participate as well, we need you to fill out a registration form by November 11th. And that link is also in the chat right now. And we'll follow up and make sure that you have access to it. But the big thing here is your presentation is going to be 3 minutes on the 21st. So if you don't register by the 9th, it helps. It means that we won't know that you're actually participating, and we won't be able to share you updates and informations and links and things like that for the 21st. So if you are interested, be sure to register by the 9th. When we present again, we'll come back here. The difference is we won't be a webinar format, we'll be in a group format, and you'll be able to unmute your mic and turn on your phone or your camera and do your presentation, but it'll be 3 minutes, and we set a timer and we cut you off. So really focus on the key deliverables of what you want us to know and what you want the judges to hear about your idea and what work you've done. Judges will have up to 2 minutes to ask you questions. Sometimes they ask lots of questions and sometimes they don't ask many. It really just depends on the topic and the presentation. So that's where you want to make sure you have a fulsome 2-minute presentation to have them really intrigued and impressed with the ideas you came up with. And your teams, you're going to have to submit documentation on the 21st by 3 p.m. And so that would be your presentation slides and anything else that you need around the team. So what you prepared, what theme, there'll be a form that you'll end up being able to fill out or details that you'll be able to submit. So you'll know exactly what you need to submit to us. The reminder though, is that if you need to register by the 9th so that you get all of this information by email later on in the next week.
And if I was just going to add, even if you're not sure if you'll be able to participate by the 21st, I encourage everyone to still register just so they can't get all that info register by the 9th, just so we know that you're interested.
Or do it right now.
Send you things. Yeah.
If you already know your team, do it now. Throw
Yeah.
your name in. Like, oh, I know I'm going to be doing it with my 2 friends who will do this. Go for it. Now's your time. Excellent. Okay. Everybody's here for the prizes. I know that you want the experience. We love that you get the experience of learning and engaging and working collaboratively with other people. But of course, cash prizes are also really, really cool. We have prizes that are focused on different aspects to make sure that we have a chance for everybody to be eligible to win, regardless of their skill set or what they present. We have a first prize and a second prize that's based on the scoring from judges, and scoring is really around the presentation, creativity, and what you've come up with. But then we have a top creative, because sometimes people develop some really technical solutions and other times people don't. And then the last one is judge's choice. So this is up to judges, because sometimes what happens is somebody has a really, really interesting idea, but it doesn't quite fit the criteria of scoring, but it's somebody's done a really good job on coming up with some novel solution. The schedule. So your reminder right now, we're meeting on the 7th, Wednesday by 11:59 p.m. You are going to register your team. And then on the 21st by 3 p.m., you're going to submit your presentation. And then you will join us again back here on a call at 6 p.m. on the 21st. So we really look forward to seeing you. We encourage you to join. The things to remember is participating in this gives you a chance to hear the way other people present. When you come back on the 21st, you get a chance to hear how other people think. It's really good for your resume for you to talk about how you were part of the community and that you got together and you worked with the team and learned something new. And I'll go back to the example of Kennedy, who was speaking earlier, and the reason why she got a job at Cove. She got a job at Cove because she was working on an internship there. And part of this is meeting people and getting experience and exposure. So as you're looking for jobs and talking about some of your experiences during an interview, you can mention, oh, when I was on this hackathon and these are the things I did. And that's what helps people really understand the diversity of what you're interested in and how you spend your time outside of school. So really glad that you're here, and participating is really important for just building out new skills and trying new things. There is a question, is there one registration per team? Yes. We're going to ask one registration per team, and you can put the names down. If something happens and you have a team member that gets added or dropped, that's fine. Just let us know later on. But I think the really big thing is that someone's registered and we have an idea of who it is. And then we email you, because otherwise we won't know who to email with information about what's happening for our event. Part of it too is we also like to know for the judges how many teams are going to present. So if it's 3 minutes, which is what you're going to get to present, is there 10 teams? Is there 5 teams? And then it really helps them kind of space out their time and know for presentation. So having people register in advance allows us to better prepare the evening. Are there any other questions?
We had the one earlier in the chat. What could be the challenges that are most pressing and that should be taken care of in development of a solution for this challenge? So maybe
Tanya, do you have an idea on that one?
Our speakers, but yeah.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
What's the most pressing challenge that should be taken care of in the development of the solution? Like most pressing challenge, climate change?
That is a very important one. Yeah.
I think there's digitization. So when May referenced some harbors and some ports that are very digitally advanced, part of it is competition. So we want to continue to attract people here, whether it's for business purposes or it's for entertainment and tourism. if we'd need to have an attractive harbor that sounds innovative and creative and is fun to be here.
Yeah, that's an important one too, certainly around economic development for sure. And yeah, business attraction and setting up and yeah, just becoming more of a magnet for everything from tourism to, as you say, business. So that promotes economic prosperity for Halifax.
I'm trying to think if there's any others. I'm sorry.
Questions? Oh, yeah, I was going to say, any other questions anyone's curious about? I will be sending this recording tomorrow with all the links again to everyone who's registered. So if you have friends who weren't able to make it, that's why you have the registration date at the end of Wednesday. So tomorrow they can watch the presentation and get all the links to see if they want to join. So look forward to that in your inboxes tomorrow.
And I think like the big thing, go back to the questions around on the water, above the water, under the water. There's little questions in there, and then have a look at the data, the publicly available data that we've got lists of. Just scroll through them, because even that just might trigger something and think, oh, I wonder what that is. And it might just give you an idea of something to explore.
Something that came to mind too, that everybody might want to think about is something a little bit more, not controversial, but certainly we're asking you to be creative. So Halifax as a defense, as a security, as a very strategic place and stationed right on the Atlantic Ocean, between us and Europe, right? So maybe that could be something that could be looked at. Halifax Digital Harbour from a security point of view.
Absolutely. I was curious if May and Anthony would get into some of that stuff, but not as much as I was kind of hoping. The excitement of military and defense. But there's lots of different ideas to explore of what's really important for keeping a harbor safe and functional and also attractive. And if you are in Halifax and haven't actually gone down and just walked along the waterfront, I highly recommend doing that, because now's the time to do it, because you could use it as part of your kind of building of exploration and just kind of checking out the buildings and the use of land. And going down now again with this mindset, you'll notice things you might not have noticed before, where vessels park and how things are tethered. Are there other resources you can access to help develop ideas? Google ports, Google smart cities, smart ports, opportunities in ports.
I like the thinking of it as a smart city and kind of working off of that. There's a lot more examples of that, and like looking at the Rotterdam port, like May mentioned, for sure. And even reviewing like all the data and all the info that especially May and Anthony put in their presentations, because they had a lot of great data and info there that can definitely be helpful to coming up with an idea. But yeah, YouTube has a lot of great videos on it too as well.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Yeah, so the question is there any other ports that have been digitized and to develop solutions? And I think that there was a couple of references that they answered, and I think that's a good one to look up. Look up, some European ports are really great, and they're just very strongly developed. Singapore strong. There's some ports in China that are very digital. Having a look and kind of scanning and seeing what they've done that's different, what the cities around them have done, how those interplay. Like I think there's pieces too around, when you think of we're a port city, you have trucks that drive down one of a main road where tourists go. And some other ports have not a lot of pedestrian work in certain parts, and then other parts are very tourist focused. I think it's kind of looking at the makeup of ports and just having a look and exploring what digital pieces have been adopted in other jurisdictions.
Yeah, I
Strongly
remember
recommend.
one of the challenge participants last year for the Bedford challenge that we had, he modeled his idea after electric boats, I think, so in the Netherlands, or maybe it was Rotterdam as well. But yeah, that wasn't information that we provided. He went out and found electric boats and modeled what that could look like for the Bedford ferry here in Halifax. So definitely Google and research and see what you can find and try to see how that would fit into Halifax.
Yeah, lots of stuff I think you can just look up. And I mean, part of the whole point of us doing this is so that you get a chance to learn about oceans and ports. And we're trying to show you the vast career potential and opportunity there is in finding roles in the future in this. And so part of this is you going and digging and learning. And, you know, Tanya spends her days trying to figure out how we can grow the workforce in the ocean sector. And this is really part of it. We're trying to drive you to learn a little bit and see how fascinating it is, because we're all bought in and we all see how incredibly robust the opportunities are in the ocean sector. And this is your chance to learn a little bit too.
If I may say, I think it might be good to bring up the fact that we've done a challenge on the port already. So we've done the One Port City challenge. So I think we need to be very cognizant that we're looking more at creating a digital harbor here. So I want to reiterate that challenge, everybody, is that we're not looking at the port as such anymore. We're looking at, you know, our harbor, what's around the harbor and so on, and digitizing it and using, again, everything from satellites to underwater seabeds like Celamaris. So keep that in mind, not about the port, more about, you know, digitizing our harbor.
I added in the chat a link to kind of the Ocean of Data page that I keep on the DeepSense site. And if you scroll down, there's the past data challenges. So you can watch the videos from the last one. And there's one from the port. You can kind of see what was covered there. And the Bedford challenge as well. So you can see to make sure to focus on more so the port one was a lot more of like trucks coming into the city and shipping logistics and all that. But yeah, this one is more kind of bringing all this data together. So you can use that as a resource as well and take a look.
And technology and adoption of tech and the evolution of how to bring lots of technology together. I think, yeah, great point. Thanks, Tanya. Yeah. All right, with that, I think that we're ready to see what you do. Remember to register, check your email as well. And we really appreciate you coming out and participating and watching and asking questions and listening. And the ocean sector is projected to be worth $3 trillion by 2030. And this is something that is continuing to grow and provide significant career opportunities. So being here and learning means you might have a door that's being opened that you don't even realize. It's going to turn into an incredibly successful career for you that's in the ocean sector. So we appreciate you coming out, and thanks everybody for being here. Thank you, Tanya, Lucia.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining us, Jen. Thanks for everyone who stuck around this whole time. Like I said, you'll get an email with this recording and all the documents I dropped in the chat later tomorrow. And hope everyone has a great Monday night. Bye.